Let me begin by saying that while this story is true, this video isn't meant to be taken serious. No, seriously, we're talking about crime here. So let's relax a little bit, have some fun while we discuss it. See, I've got a green screen, a semi-decent camera, a sweet microphone, and if I don't use it, my wife says I have to lose it. So, today on Crime Time, we're talking about how a 44-year-old Dutch hacker I should say, managed to create a cocaine highway through some good old-fashioned social engineering, physical keyloggers, C2 agents, and peak script kiddie behavior. Then we'll wrap up with what we can take away and learn from this, because we're a cybersecurity channel, so why not? I'm your host, Dahvid, aka APT Big Daddy, and let's jump into the story.
Crime time! Crime time.
All right, first things first. Let's set the stage. Imagine you're a high-level drug trafficker, just hypothetically, don't actually do crimes, or do. I'm not your dad or your lawyer. And you have a lot of product, and we're talking like cocaine's by the kilos, which, if you need that in freedom units, it's like a small baby, that you need to move through a busy shipping port in the Netherlands, say Rotterdam or Antwerp. Back in the day, you'd have to bribe a small army of people, like dock workers, crane operators, customs inspectors, basically the whole choir of accomplices singing Money in Harmony. Think like season 2 of The Wire, but real life. Great show, by the way. Anyways, criminal groups used to corrupt a long chain of port personnel to sneak their goods through. But we're in the 2020s now, and these ports run on computers more than clipboards. So, gang gang. So our modern traffickers have a thought. Why pay off 50 people when you can pay off one super cool hacker dude or dudette and one insider to game the system? That's efficiency, baby, that, even Big Four could get behind. And that's where our guy comes in. Enter our protagonist. Antagonist? Enter our antagonist, a 44-year-old Dutch hacker whose name has been properly redacted everywhere we look, so we're just going to call him Flash Drive Frank. Again, I say hacker slightly lightly, and we'll get into it a little bit, but on paper, this dude struggled to keep a steady job. He studied computer science, he lived on social benefits, the whole bit. Basically the stereotype of every junior programmer in the post-AI era. But behind the scenes, this guy actually had a very profitable side hustle as a black hat service provider. Let's be real, script kiddie, selling his mad hacker skills to cocaine smugglers. Basically, if a port's a giant vending machine of cargo, our boy found a way to peek at all the snacks and hand out the ones labeled extra sugar. He wasn't some genius mastermind coder or a dude that would read Windows DLLs to find zero-day exploits or anything. In fact, if you read the court documents, they showed that his methods were pretty basic. Referring to Nessus as a pen testing tool kind of basic. He also had a bit of a rap sheet already. This guy was pretty much a peak contributor to human society. He had prior computer crime issues, even dabbling in reselling malware, and a touch of extortion on the side. He was a real overachiever in all the wrong ways. But, hey, he got results. Which, to be honest, he may have really succeeded in tech sales. Yeah, I know not all of you are like that, but you know who you are. So how do you hack a whole port? Where do you even start? Do we start with phishing emails, like 90% of other attacks? Honestly, it just felt a little too mainstream for our boys, so wasn't going to happen. How about a Mission Impossible style vault break? Considering the fact that ports don't have vaults, at least not this one, probably not that way either. Physical violence? It is effective, but it would probably make for a less entertaining story, so no. Our guy kept it simple, elegant, classic, good old-fashioned social engineering, but with a physical twist. No, not an armbar. Calm down, you there in the front row with the tap-out shirt.
Grab his dick and twist it! Oh my god!
Now you see, our boy Frank, he did the unimaginable, the heinous, the unthinkable. He just offered an office clerk €10,000 to plug in a little flashy boy, which they tell me 60% of the time, it works every time. Which, dude, why does nobody offer me 10 grand to plug in a flash drive? But yes, the classic, cool, I found this USB in the parking lot. Let's see what's on it hack. So this is going to be our attack path. Basically, the clerk does the work and our boy Frank would find himself in possession of one VIP all-access backstage ticket to the sunny port of Antwerp. Shit, actually, it's not sunny at all. It's just an ugly port. Ugh. Hey. But I mean, come on. Even the U.S. government knows better than to trust USB drives and Katy Perry albums, and their understanding of cybersecurity is copper plug-in bad. But this is like 2008 level security knowledge. The fact that this was the initial access vector is pretty bad. I mean, I'll just take a seat right here. It's getting really, really hot. Anyways, this stupidly simple attack that's every red teamer's wet dream opened the door to months of remote access for our script kiddie. If you're the decision maker for hiring a red team and you're watching this video right now, you have no excuse to say USB drops are not in scope. I mean, this is a modern day attack, so it's still a realistic scenario. Back to the story. On September 18th, 2020 at 15:20, our clerk inserted the USB dongle, double-clicked the program, and waited 15 seconds as per our script kiddie's instructions before removing the USB and disposing of it. Like, I'm just kind of disappointed in the endpoint security at this point. Like, who on earth were they using? But the upside of this, and there is an upside, is that it wasn't discovered until April of 2021, which sounds like a long time, but in numbers terms is 7 months. And I say uptime because let it sink in for a second. It's really not that bad for a mean time to detect or mean time to remove. Honestly, it's better than over half the other organizations that get breached according to IBM's Cost of a Breach 2025 report. But really, when we look at it, this attack basically went as why crack password from afar when Bob in shipping can plug me in. And Bob obliged. Like, damn it, Bob. We talked about this in your computer-based social engineering awareness video. So right after our clerk deployed the C2 agent, our genius of a friend Frank immediately began bragging about it on his SkyECC group chat with his clients we should say. Which, if you don't know what SkyECC is, the TLDR is that it used to be this encrypted messaging app ecosystem used extensively by criminal groups. It was cracked and hacked by the government, and well, no longer extensively used by criminal groups. Think like WhatsApp, but less Facebook stealing your data and more criminals communicating about how they're stealing your data. Anyways, this man's famous words when the C2 called back were, "I'm in." And then he began live blogging about each step he took, which, to be honest, is pretty funny. And it's something like a junior pen tester would do and say, right? Like they just discovered the next log4j exploit and they're just like, "I'm in. I'm Mr. Hacker." But I mean, criminal 101, you don't talk about your crimes, homie. So you may be asking at this point, what did our friendly neighborhood script kiddie do with this access? Well, first he started exploring the network and hunting for his big prize, which, shocker, admin credentials. I like to kind of imagine him at this point poking around in the folders and systems and like trying passwords, like he's on a treasure hunt and just failing hard. And you might be wondering, like, how do we know that? You know, which is the funny part, because he was giving the play-by-plays in the SkyECC group chat. Like, everything he was trying was failing hard. So hard so that he was pulling the business move of focusing on his wins for like the plug and play tactics with the USB. He'd be like, well, you know, I'm not really out there yet, but like the USB worked, guys. So like one of the examples that we pulled from the court docs were upon getting access, immediately was getting caught and blocked by the intrusion detection system, which we'll let that sink in because that's pretty bad. But like in the chat logs, he had put that the IDS, and this is a direct quote, was a, in quote, pain in the ass, and that he would ensure to delete the logs later once he got admin credentials. Like, this dude was hammering this IDS system like he was a real gangster and it owed him money. And while the chat logs around this were pretty funny, the grim reality is that the IDS was working. Granted, in this case, not well enough to stop him or make someone look at the alert, but I mean, it was enough to make him whine about it. And I mean, I've been bashing this guy pretty heavily, right? Because his methods aren't exactly 007, and you know, we like to think of cyber criminals as actually being good at stuff. But let's not stop there. Let's make fun of him some more, because there's some more things that we found particularly funny when we were researching this attack. Like, At one point when he was fighting the IDS, he was using a tool called Advanced IP Scanner, which if you don't know what that is, it's a graphical user interface tool like Nmap, but you deploy it locally on the system. So this dude was installing his own toys on the distant end and using the GUI because apparently using the C2 system was way too difficult. And it's like, this is going to give me an aneurysm by like how much telemetry this dude gave the defenders. But that's not even the funniest piece of the whole attack, right? Even funnier of this is that we know that the initial attack, the initial access attack to go from 0 to hero, lasted the entire month of September and into October. And he was really hitting a roadblock with privilege escalation, like heavy, to the point of desperation. So at one point he tried using an old exploit called CVE 2016-7255, which is a kernel level exploit for Windows from like 10 years ago. And like most other kernel exploits, it didn't work. But he didn't just try it once. Nah, our hero tried it everywhere. Like he brute forced the shit out of it and failed on everything. It reminds me of this one time when I created a denial of service script called Eternal Blue It All to Hell, which just ran Eternal Blue against every system it could find on the network. And if you know anything about Eternal Blue, you know it has about a 50-50 chance of blue screening the device. So 10 out of 10 wouldn't use in a real environment, but it was a funny script, and this guy just was like, fuck it, let's do it. So once he realized that that wasn't going to work, he tried using a toolkit called Impact, which led nowhere. Because apparently he didn't understand it. Eventually, on September 29th, 9 days after initial access, he found a domain controller admin password hash, which, for those who don't know, this isn't a password, it's just the encrypted form of the password. It wasn't NTLMV1, so he couldn't reuse it. He'd still have to crack it. But he was so stoked about it that he tweeted it out to his chat, and he was like, yo, this password hash is going to give him total control over the systems. Newsflash, it didn't, because he couldn't crack it. So like the 0 to hero that this man was, instead of writing some elegant code or deploying a sophisticated hack or literally going to any hacking wiki for beginners to get some tips and tricks, he goes for a more hands-on solution since that worked the first time. He goes and tells his contact on the inside to plug in a hardware keylogger. Damn it, Bob! I need my notes. But, yep, back to the physical. Okay, so for the uninitiated, a hardware keylogger is like a tiny gadget you stick between the PC and the keyboard. It records every keystroke, which could include usernames, passwords to work, and it does this by capturing the physical signal instead of trying to rely on software. So it's a hardware means versus software means. It's this cyber equivalent of hiding under someone's desk and watching them type, like the little creeper you are. But instead of it being a consultant from Big Four, it's a gadget. So our guy sends a photo of the device, which is an AirDrive USB keylogger, records all strokes to his crews, and gives instruction to where to plug it in. And in the chat, he was bragging that it was, in quote, untraceable, and that antivirus doesn't matter. It's like he was almost giving like this late night infomercial, like, tired of those pesky passwords stopping your hack? Try the Keylogger 3000, untraceable. No antivirus can catch it. Steal creds in style. Okay, but like, joking aside, it is a very effective trick. Like, I've used it on my red teams. I've had teams use it from teams that I've run. It's old school, but it's effective. And our boy Flash Drive Frank was living up to his name, basically saying like, hey, if software hacking fails, just fuck it, go to the physical. So like, you know, why hack the Gibson when you can just watch the sysadmin type p@ssw0rd123 in real time, right? That would be too easy to guess. So the unsurprising thing that this worked, and thanks to these little shenanigans, our boy Frank was able to escalate his access and now had deeper control of the network and access to the port's container management system. And this is where our cocaine highway starts to really make sense. Because with those systems, he could see which shipping containers were where they came from, where they were going, really all the juicy data. Essentially, he had the manifest of the entire port, and if you're a cocaine smuggler and your consultant, like our chat of a human being, Frank, could tell you, hey, go hide your stuff in container X on ship Y, it almost never gets checked. That's a game changer, and that's exactly what he did. He identified shipping routes and specific containers that were likely to avoid scrutiny and even recommended those to his clients. It's like rolling through TSA pre-check with your shoes full of razor blades because, they won't check. So, to be honest, it seemed like he was pretty good at this, and maybe when he gets out of jail, he can find a job working in shipping management because he was a boss at it. In late 2020, using the access that he had, our script kiddie helped set up a specific shipment that's called out inside the court documents of about 210 kilograms of cocaine, hidden in what was supposed to be a load of wine. It's a pretty classy cover, though, right? Cocaine contour poured with a nice Merlot. Anyways, to put 210 kilograms into freedom units, that's about 460 pounds of coke. So like 50 babies this time? At least a fully grown panda bear made of full cocaine, or probably like 3.5 Ariana Grandes. That's what we're talking about here. Hidden amongst crates of Italiano vino. And they didn't just stash and pray either, right? It wasn't that kind of operation. The crew had fake paperwork, forged transport orders, and perfect timing on their side, to be honest. And the plan was, once the ship arrived, they'd cancel the original pickup, insert their own truck to collect the container, and drive out like it's just another day at the port. If pulled off, no one realized that the container took a little detour filled with spicy goodies. Marching powder, booger sugar, nose candy, devil day. Basically, our scripting wizard was acting effectively as IT support and logistics coordinator for the smugglers. He even warned his partners at one point that if they messed up using the port's digital system to schedule a pickup, which is called port base, that they were, and quote, in trouble. He would be like, you're in trouble. In other words, follow my instructions, the whole thing blows up. Which, real Billy Badass over here threatening, cartel smugglers. It's like the internet makes you feel confident against repercussions, huh? But I mean, he was successful at what he was paid to do, and he turned a legitimate shipping system into cocaine autobahn. And for a while, it worked like a smooth ride on this highway. But then, plot twist, the police showed up.
FBI, open up!
But how'd they catch on, you ask? Well, it wasn't some IT defense team doing good. It's a lot worse than that. You remember when we mentioned about the Sky ECC being something that criminals used to use, and where our bragger Bill was gloating and coordinating? Well, he found out the hard way that it wasn't as secret as he thought. And in 2021, law enforcement in Europe cracked the Sky ECC network and got access to a flood of criminal communications. They basically eavesdropped on the entire Underworld's group chat, with warrants and international cooperation, of course. This wasn't done in the US. Yep, that's right. Our guy's braggy messages were in that trove that got hacked, and imagine his face when he realized that the cops had been reading his villain monologue the whole time. So in September 2021, a whole year after initial access, the Dutch police swoop in and arrest Mr. Hacker mid-operations to help him celebrate a one-year anniversary of his USB shenanigans, which, I think we can all agree on enjoying. They had receipts for everything. They had the USB plot, the keylogger talk, the container info, and you name it, it all came from him. Again, criminal 101, don't brag about your crimes. Anyways, this dude gets hauled off into court, and by 2022, he's convicted on multiple counts of hacking, drug trafficking, conspiracy, and even a little bit of attempted extortion. The court found that he played a pretty central role in turning the port's IT access into a tool for organized crime. Now, of course, flash drive Frank wasn't too happy about this outcome. Shocker. And he appealed, mainly whining that the police shouldn't be allowed to read his precious encrypted messages. But that's like a bank robber saying you can't use the security cam footage. That's cheating. He tried to appeal it like that, right? And the court in January of 2026 said, nope, try again, upheld his conviction and sentence. And in fact, the judge explicitly brushed off his complaint about the chat evidence, saying his right to a fair trial wasn't violated just because his secret club got busted. Which you can almost hear like the the facepalm from the judge as they had to point that out. In the end, Frank got 7 years in the slammer, which was down from an initial heavier sentence of about 10 years, which seems to me a little lenient for what he was doing. But hey, I don't know jack about Dutch law, so maybe that's a lot. They also confiscated his hacking gear, aka his Flipper Zero, and made him pay for the port's cleanup and legal bills, which I guess is a win for the port. So what did we learn on this wild ride? Aside from, again, never trusting a USB stick or a Katy Perry album. I think there's several things that we can take away from this story. First, insider threats are still very, very much real, and USB drives still cause a threat to most organizations. I think many of us really understand this, but how many of us are actually paying attention to this? Because all the high-tech cybersecurity in the world was pretty much undone by one well-placed USB and an insider who either needed the money because they were treated like shit, or they lacked the social intelligence to know a random USB drive doesn't equal free storage. The second takeaway we can take from this is crime is geeky. This was organized crime hiring hackers like it's Ocean's 11 meets Mr. Robot. And it's not a new thing. Traffickers leverage digital tools to do what used to require bribing dozens of people. And the fact is that crime doesn't change, it just evolves. And this is one of those cases where we can see it evolving. And we've already seen many cyber criminal organizations operate like legitimate cybersecurity companies, but without morals. We may be seeing a soon-to-be-true future of drug lords that have IT support on payroll. Which, could you imagine applying to a legitimate job after that? Like, hey, can you tell me more about this title on your resume? Cocaine logistics cyber specialist? What's that? Tell me about that. Another takeaway we can take from this is being a cyber criminal doesn't mean you're smart. I mean, we like to mystify a lot of cyber criminals as these super elite hacker dudes. Truth is, our guy literally narrated his entire crime in an encrypted chat and thought he was safe. He didn't write a single bit of custom code, used many off-the-shelf products and tools that every mid-sized business tells me on the regular that they would catch, and to be honest, when we do red teaming, they don't. But the more funny irony of this whole story is that Frank got burned because someone else hacked his comms, and that's like level 100 type irony, which I think is funny. Next, I think a good takeaway from this is just because you create an alert doesn't mean somebody saw it and respond to that threat. I mean, this dude pounded the IDS and endpoints harder than a college mattress during Pledge Week. Yet, it wasn't the local information security team that caught him in the act. In fact, if law enforcement never broke the Sky ECC ecosystem in the first place, I think you would have seen this breach go on for far longer, to the point of where a counter-drug task force would be the point of discovery. And it would focus more on the port and then subsequent investigation into the network versus actually finding something. Like, this is a huge defensive blunder that is far too common and is brushed off as by other organizations as like, we would have done better. But would you really have, bro? Really? I know many red teamers who would love to tell you similar stories of their exploits where they were just as much overlooked, but honestly, that should be its own video, so let's continue. I think the last takeaway is that karma catches up to everyone, right? For a while, our guy was making bank, reportedly charging hundreds of thousands of euros for his services and living large. But later, he was torn apart piece by every piece of evidence that he provided. And the clerk who allegedly accepted a comparably small bribe and plugged in the USB to facilitate initial access, they were also arrested and prosecuted, becoming immortalized in a non-serious crime video on YouTube. Gotta say, that just blows. 10 out of 10 wouldn't want to be an insider threat again, or at least without better negotiation skills. But the big thing is if this guy wasn't such a talkative Tim, the damage to the country and the port could have been significantly worse with the amount of drugs that they could have pushed through. And they may have gotten away with it. And that's it, folks. That's the tale of the 44-year-old Dutch script kiddie who opened up a cocaine highway with nothing more than a USB stick, a cheap C2, hardware keylogger, and some generic tooling, and a whole lot of hubris. If you enjoyed this content, let us know. And be sure to smash that like button like it's the IDS alerts annoying Frank. Subscribe for more crazy tales from the digital underworld on crime time, and let us know in the comments, what's the wildest crime caper you'd like to see broken down next? I'm APT Big Daddy, reminding you that the only safe way to plug in a USB from a stranger is on someone else's computer, preferably someone you don't personally know, and in a different state. Party hard, but not too hard. I'm not your dad. See you next time.